Welcome to the HYSKY pod. Today, we are so lucky to be sitting with Kevin Ross, who is a distinguished technology innovator and STEM education advocate, best known as the founding chairman of First Washington and a member of the First Executive Advisory Board. Before his pivotal work in education, Kevin was a design engineer at Microsoft, where he spent nearly a decade helping to develop foundational technologies during the company's early growth. He contributed to major software projects, including early visions of Windows, and became known for his problem solving acumen and commitment to user friendly design. Well, I, for one, appreciate that. In 1996, motivated by a desire to address the disconnect between classroom learning and real world engineering, Kevin left Microsoft to focus on inspiring the next generation. In 1999, he co-founded Washington First Robotics, which is now First Washington, growing it into a statewide movement that supports over 1,000 robotics teams and nearly 12,000 students annually. Kevin continues to mentor robotics teams in Duvall, Washington, and remains a guiding force in the FIRST community. His work has been recognized by the Microsoft Alumni Network, which named him the 2017 Integral Fellow for his lifelong dedication to nurturing innovation, leadership, and community among young technology leaders. Kevin, woo, round of applause. Welcome to the HYSKY pod.
You make me sound cooler than I really am. I like it.
No, you definitely are cool because I always tell a story of how I met the person that I'm interviewing. And I didn't even need to read your bio or have everything to know those things about you.
Oh,
So, yeah. So for those of you that don't know, well, first let's start out by tell people a little bit what First is, what First Washington is, and then I'll tell how we met.
FIRST is a international program. It's mostly in the U.S., but I think we're in 112 countries or something like that now. And it's a program. It's an acronym. It means for inspiration and recognition of science and technology. Our whole idea here um, is to inspire students to get involved in STEM. And Dean Kamen and with the assistance of Woody Flowers, who was an MIT professor, came up with this program where they kind of took everything you would consider really cool about high school sports and they swapped the game out. So instead of a basketball court, they swapped in a robotics court. But aside from that, we try and generate as much enthusiasm with the kids as we can, and we let them be students. They are assisted by mentors who come in from industry and help out. And our goal is to inspire them to pursue science and technology.
Yeah, and we had Dean Kamen on here a few months back. He was on an episode, and the way that he told kind of his struggles with being in the classroom. So many of us, I think, can relate to that. I also am neurodivergent and do not learn like I can do good on a test, but I talk a lot and I blurt things out. Definitely on the autism spectrum, and so for him to recognize that and turn it into a sport is so huge. And when he was telling me about it and he was showing me some videos, I had never been. I knew what First was, and I've
Uh-huh.
seen it on YouTube and I saw the website, but it did not connect until I went to the First Championships in Houston, which is where we met. And
Yes.
I was absolutely blown away. When Kevin is saying it's a sport, it is literally a sport. And we were treated like VIP. And I think one of the first things that I said to Kevin was, I've never been treated like royalty for being an engineer. So it's just like an environment where technologists, engineers, and scientists are really praised. How did you um, how did you become a co-founder in First Washington? How did you first hear about First?
So, uh, card carrying nerd. that's me. So I was the president of the Seattle Robotics Society, which in the 90s was the largest hobbyist group doing robotics in the world. We had somewhere around 1,000 members locally and maybe 2,000 members worldwide. Um, and a young woman named Ashley Snodgrass came to one of our meetings and said, "I'd like help with my high school robotics project." And that's kind of right up my alley. And so I said, "Sure, I'll help you out." Now I was thinking about, a high school robot project, which is usually fairly small. And it turned out to be this thing called the first robotics competition. Had
Um,
also never heard of it. And so I got involved with her high school. And in 1999, 2000 school year, we did, it was the first year that I was involved, and I helped start FRC Team 360. Teams are all assigned a unique number. It's sort of like their, uh, their standard for rallying around things.
sure.
So, and after the first season, so I worked with the team, myself and three other mentors worked with the team to design and build a robot to play the game for that year. And about 3 weeks in, I realized this is really something. This is, I had never really had an opportunity to work with students in this sort of realm, and their level of enthusiasm, their level of ability to learn and get things done shocked me. I didn't realize how capable they were. They don't know anything, but it turns out that that never stopped anybody. And the level of enthusiasm and the level of engagement that they generated, and the dedication that they put into it made me realize this is what I want to do. So I've been now doing this for 26 years after that
Wow. What
very
was her
pivotal
name
moment.
again? We have to give her a proper shout out.
Ashley Snodgrass. And
Okay.
she was from Belderman Prep in Tacoma, a private school. And she was delightful. She was, think of a 4'9" Harry Potter. She looked a lot like Harry Potter with
Oh,
the
that's
glasses.
great. I
And
love it.
yeah, and there were a couple of other teams in the area as well that year. I think there were two other teams, and none of us had ever heard of it before. And then the Seattle Robotics Society had sort of adopted this, and I starting additional teams, and then we formed a nonprofit, and it's just sort of grown ever since.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. Okay. So, um, back to when we met. So, like I said, I had heard at first, I've seen it on the internet, but this was my first time going to the championship. And I'm going to show some videos that I took. I'll cut away here.
Okay.
But when I walked in to that stadium, is what I have to call it, a stadium, I felt like I was teleported into the future. I mean, I would and teleport or into like a parallel universe that was so optimistic and hopeful. The energy, I was just like, you cannot be pessimistic in that crowd. There's nothing but hope for the future. To see all the kids coming together, to see topics like autism, racism, sexism being addressed, and all of the kids being so just so understanding and inclusive and excited. I was just like, I have been missing out. Whoa. And so it's like on the one hand, and I was thinking I was going to go like into, I don't know, maybe a room like the size of like maybe half a basketball court. And I would see like, maybe 25 students competing. I didn't know that you were going to shut down all of downtown Houston, and the convention center was packed. And I have to tell you, I was at an event Tuesday at the convention center, and it was a big event, but it felt sad because all the kids were gone, and there were barely anybody there. I mean, it was a successful event, but my point is nothing is like it. And so, and shout out Dr. Ainsley Booker because she was with me when we met you, and I want to get her title right. She's the executive director of Dartmouth Next, Dartmouth College. Her and
Right.
I had met the day before from Mark, I believe it was, who's part of First. And so we were just sort of like kindred spirits. And I had sort of went around walking the floor before she had, so I was like her tour guide, even though I didn't really know what I was showing her. But I was like, well, there's some cool stuff over here. And so then we ended up in the main stadium in the main championship, and we were just like, where do we go? And I was like, oh, there's some seats over there. We didn't know if we were going to get kicked out or what. We had like the special bracelet and everything, but we didn't know if we were allowed to go over there because it definitely felt like this is where the celebrities sit. And and so we sat over there, and you were so gracious and telling us, explaining the game. So I think I asked you a question like, what does that mean? And because as Kevin said, the teams are assigned numbers. And so the screen's like flashing all of these numbers, and there are multiple robots and kids competing at the same time. And so you really did a good job of helping Ainsley and I understand the game, but still, I didn't absorb much of it because I was just so taken back by all of the excitement. So, with that, I thought it would be a good idea. I want to call up this document to sort of explain the game because which one should I pull up first? The one, actually, I think I'll pull up
Just
this.
how about just the overview of the field?
Okay, cool. I think it's this one.
Yeah, there you go. All
Awesome.
right. So, just as a preface, the game for the first robotics competition, in fact, all of the games are different each year. So each year the teams get a different challenge, and the challenges are pretty they differ greatly in flavor. So last year's robot will not be able to run this year's contest.
I
It just
love
doesn't
it.
work that way. There are some basics. This field is about the size of a basketball court. It's for all of the nerds out there, it's 30 by 54. And there are two sides to it. There is the Red Alliance and the Blue Alliance. Each alliance consists of three teams, and they're working together to accomplish the goals of the game. All of the scoring is done by alliance, so all three teams have to work together and cooperate to do their best to put up the best score. And so,
I want to pause you right there because
yeah.
I want to draw on this. Let's see if we can pull this up in
Oh, in the
whiteboard.
whiteboard. Sure.
Yeah, let's see if I can do that. Whiteboard. Here we go. Because what this is the part where I was getting the most confused.
Sure.
Will it let me paste the image? I'm trying to get this image in there
Should.
though. Maybe I need to upload it.
Um,
I'm gonna get it in there.
Hit Control V, see what happens.
I did. It wasn't, but can I upload it? Surely you can put an image in here. We could even just draw. Oh, I really wish I could stick that image in there. What are these?
Oh, I think you should be able to. Let's see. You can do an upload. You can do a
Where do you see upload?
uploads right here. But it's down.
Oh, that little button. Okay, okay, here
Yeah,
we go.
the up thing.
Awesome. Oh yeah.
There we
Okay.
go.
Awesome. So this is where I was getting confused because so just starting from like basics, can you talk about how many people are on a team and the red and blue aspect and then sort of like where I guess I don't need to share my screen now.
Oh, yeah, cool. And all right. Yeah,
Okay, cool.
we can do that. I think I can use the pen here, and I will use a famous color of. Uh, I'll use this yellow. There we go.
Cool. And you can use the little stick figures or anything, but yeah, the
Sure.
part I was so say that I'm coming in, I'm competing, I'm on a team. How big are the teams?
Okay, so um, one more time here. There we go. So a first robotics is really a team-based sport, and so if you start at your individual school or community group, They vary wildly in this number of students that are on the team. They're somewhere between, some teams have as few as 10. Here in the Seattle area, we have a couple of teams that have over 100 on a single
Oh,
team.
wow. What's the
And
minimum?
the 10 is kind of the minimum. We've got teams who are slightly smaller, but a competitive team usually is at least 10 kids
Okay.
and a couple of mentors. And so we usually go for uh, so there are the students, and then there are the mentors or adults that work with them. And oftentimes you'll see about a 4-to-1 ratio of mentors to students. Um, so the teams that actually design and build the robot are fairly large. On the field, you're allowed to bring 4 people out with you. 2 people are drivers, and drivers. So I'm gonna let's consider this end of the field down here. So you can see these are the driver stations,
Mm-hmm.
and so there are 3 driver stations, and there'll be 2 students designated as drivers. They can actually teleoperate the robot,
Mm-hmm.
and then 1 person is the coach, and that's oftentimes a student, sometimes an adult. And then they also have what's called a human player. And down here in the corner is an area where a human player will take some game elements and introduce them to the field.
Mm-hmm.
All of this is mirrored over here on the other side. So down in the lower left here, we would call this the Blue Alliance, and you can tell because it's got that blue. It's blue, and up here
Like
is the Red Alliance, right?
I can't, is it a hexagram or I can't tell, but yes, I
Yeah,
see the blue. Uh-huh.
yeah. So uh,
Real quick before you go on, so you said there are 2 drivers
yeah,
driving the same robot or each. So how
yeah,
does that, is it different parts of the robot doing
yeah.
different? Okay.
Yeah, usually there'll be 1 student actually navigates the robot, and
Yeah.
then not always, but sometimes a second operator may do the arms and
Okay.
the and other things.
Okay. So
So
they have to really be understanding what each other are doing for it to work. Okay. That's super interesting. So I didn't know that.
yeah,
Okay.
and so now an alliance, which is 3 individual teams, for most of the event are randomly selected. So
Wow.
you are randomly assigned your alliance partners, and during the qualification rounds, you have to work with those other teams to come up with the best strategy for your alliance to go out and compete. The
Wow.
alliance in match 1 is going to be different than the alliance that you have in match 2. And this is part of the beauty of FIRST is we have this thing, this ethic called gracious professionalism,
Mm-hmm.
where teams are expected to help each other out and treat each other with respect and empathy. You're still competing like crazy, but you're not trying to do it at the detriment of others.
Mm-hmm.
And what this does is it causes the teams to actually have to interact quite a bit, and they get to know each other a little bit. And then the coolest thing about FIRST is because of this gracious professionalism idea, the students' social shields sort of drop. And you'll find that they are really willing to talk to others because they realize that in the FIRST environment of with thousands of people there, they're going to be treated with respect. They're going to be listened to, and if you get as good, you give as good as you take,
Yeah.
and so it makes a really nice environment. The game itself, by having these random assignments, means that it's in everybody's best interest for everybody to do well because your opponent in one match might be your partner in the next match. So you really want to make sure that
Mm.
everybody's running well.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, speaking of, what did you call it? Gracious professionalism?
Gracious professionalism.
I saw that. So also during the competitions, there are also some conference sessions going on in some of the other rooms. And so I was just poking around and sitting in some of them. I did not realize a lot of them are led by the students or former, I guess, first alumni.
Mhm.
I was in, there were 2 in particular that stood out. One I went to because it was a neurodivergent one. And I
Uh-huh.
was curious because I'm neurodivergent. And so I wanted to see like who, what were they saying about this topic? You don't often see that. at any science event. So I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I feel kind of seen. I want to sit in. The people that were leading it, and I wish I knew their names. I mean, they couldn't have been older than 18 or 19. And I was so impressed. They were getting hard questions. Some of the adults were asking hard questions. Some of the kids were asking hard questions, like, what do you do in a situation like this? Just on the fly, the way that they handled it, their public speaking skills, I mean, I wasn't that good until like maybe, senior year of college.
Mhm.
And maybe after. And maybe still am not that good, but I couldn't believe the willingness of the kids and how vulnerable the kids were to talk about it. And just, I was like, oh my gosh, these kids, boy, you guys are literally, this is the future. And it was just so hopeful. So I saw a lot of that. And then I went to some of the booths and I was talking to them, and they're so proud and so sweet and so excited that it's just infectious. And I was just like, oh, I'm never going to miss any of these ever again. So I just wanted to kind of speak to that point that I did interact with a lot of them. And it was just beautiful. It was just such a beautiful thing to see, and so enlightening and uplifting in a time where you don't see a lot of that, especially if you turn on the TV or you're on the internet. This is where it's at. Boy, you guys have the right idea. So I definitely saw that gracious professionalism. That's interesting that it kind of, I see like they have to compete and they have to be allies. So yeah, it serves you, does not serve you to beef with another team. That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
it is. And a lot of this influence was from Dr. Woody Flowers, MIT professor, who was sort of he was the humanitarian of the original group, and sort of he's sort of our guru, if you will.
Was
He
he
passed
there
away.
in Houston?
No, he passed away in
Oh,
2019.
oh, okay.
So,
Rest in peace, Woody
but he
Flowers,
was
Dr. Woody Flowers.
his influence on the first community. There's no way to overstate the power that this guy had, uh,
Mm,
and he was extraordinarily gracious with the students, and really sort of set that ethic up. And it's a self-fulfilling ethic, because the reality is that when you make the community very inviting and somewhere that people want to be, they will stick with it.
yeah,
And we have a very, very high retention rate on volunteers and on students. And one of the great lines that one of the board members realized, well, actually Dean and Woody, students students are relatively malleable. Students in general will always gravitate to those things that are celebrated. So if you think
yeah,
about a typical high school sport like the football team, uh, you know, students gravitate towards the football team because,
right.
oh, they get to wear a jersey, they're
Yep.
celebrated, there's pep rallies, and I mean, let's face it, football it's an okay game, but it really isn't that fun to play.
Yeah.
A
And it's
lot
not
of
that
work.
fun to watch, in my opinion.
Yeah, yeah, but I mean, but they're attracted to it
Yeah.
because of the social status of that, and that is that sort of celebration attracts students. So whenever you celebrate students for doing something, they will participate. If
Yeah.
you don't celebrate them, they kind of won't. They will find things that they will be celebrated for, and that's kind of the one of the base theories behind the behind FIRST is let's celebrate these students for being scientists and engineers and smart. And so part of our hook is this world championship where we put on the big show, and they are not only are they there cheering and stuff, but they are there as participants
Hmm.
and being celebrated. And so that helps a lot. And it, you know, I love high school sports. I don't ever want to
Sure,
denigrate or
sure.
sound like I am. Uh, they have managed they have managed to I'll say this I don't mean this to be sinister, but they have really managed to infiltrate their way into the school system so that if you went to a high school and they didn't have a football team, you go,
What kind of school is this?
what the hell kind of school doesn't have a football team, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
congratulations to them. I mean, they've done a great job, and there's a lot of infrastructure that surrounds the football team.
Hmm.
And uh, the lots of plus sides to that. The downside is the number of students that go from high school to professional sports is like 0.0001%,
Yep.
right? It's a
Yep.
small number. And so one of the things about us, the way we work this thing is we're celebrating them. And it turns out every one of our kids can turn pro. And many, many, many of them do. I don't have the current stats sitting off the top of my head, but it's a high percentage of our students go on to major in science and technology in college, and most of them actually succeed, which
Well,
is
and yeah, and I even witnessed that when I was there. Some of the mentors that I met, or coaches, some of the coaches and
coaches
mentors
and
that I
mentors. Yeah.
met, yeah, they had some of these turn into their own companies. They get funding. I mean, I was just so impressed by how much talent was in that area. And sort of a tangent, but I'm part of this partnership in Houston that does like economic development and things like that. And I've only lived in Houston for a little over a year, so I'm very new to the group. Um, but I asked, what are you guys doing with First? And they didn't know what it was. And then we actually had a meeting on Tuesday where we went to the convention center to another event. And so I said, "Oh, this feels weird being back here." I feel like where you could still kind of feel the energy, but it was
Mhm.
just quiet. And I'm like, there's not popcorn on the floor. Like all the things that like were just made it first, championship. And so I was just really just appreciating how huge it was. So
Yeah.
anyway, I spent the time as we were walking around because we had to do like a group tour of this thing. And so I was saying, oh, and over here they had this. And I was kind of making the leader of the group a little bit irritated because I've got my phone out. I'm like, see, this is where they're doing the stadium. This is where they were having the championship. And they're like, oh, yeah, that is right there. They're like, when was this? I was like 6 weeks ago. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah. So anyway, so I did get some more fans, but yeah, I saw that. I saw a lot of them going on to start businesses, and a lot of the like entrepreneurs and CEOs that were there were former alumni themselves and were like recruiting or teaching their team or putting their team through the program, and that's how they get trained for the job. And I'm like, this is brilliant. Even though I'm somebody in aviation and aerospace, and our we also have a nonprofit focused on decarbonizing aerospace and aviation with hydrogen. And so people might say, well, what in the world are you doing with First? And why do you have Dean Kamen on your podcast? And why do you have Kevin Ross on your podcast? Well, what I learned, and this didn't hit me. I didn't realize this until I was there. Every single thing that the students are doing at First is applicable to every single job they could or want. NASA knows it, DoD knows it. They were there recruiting. There were some Ivy League schools they're recruiting. And well, I saw it and I said, well, I know for selfish reasons, well, I know where to find my talent. But I mean, it's like every job, where it's like, we need more talented people. I'm like, they're there.
Yep.
They're there, they're hungry, they're ready, and they're so professional already. And so I just kudos to you all for everything that you're doing because I saw that. I saw that firsthand that here this is our future workforce and it looks good.
Yeah, when you talk about workforce development, why we aren't the biggest thing in workforce development, I have yet to figure out. But the um, when you're a small to medium-sized company, for example, uh, students don't know who you are. They don't know what you do, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
Microsoft, Google, Meta, the kids know who they are,
sure.
and yay, they'd love to go work for them. But do they really want to come work for your company? And
Hmm.
that's a tough problem because when you're trying to hire people, especially talent people,
Hmm.
with engineering and heavy science sort of stuff, your company is probably completely unknown to like 99.9% of the students. And so, wouldn't it be nice to be part of a community that you have access to all of these students, even if you just had access to 20 or 30 kids at your local high school? Chances are you're going to find one or two of them that you'd really like to hire. And this happens all the time. And it breaks my heart to that more companies don't actually see the enlightened self-interest that being involved in first will take. We do see great examples of it. And in
Yep.
fact, my own team, I have 30 kids or so in
Hmm.
a relatively rural high school in just outside of Seattle. And uh, uh, a company called Fresh Engineering.
Hmm.
They do
I love
custom
that
contract
name.
work, build robots, that sort of stuff. They
Hmm.
hired my entire team for the
Wow.
summer. And actually,
Wow.
some of those students stayed with the company for several years. Now, one of them has gone off to NASA, and but they had such a great experience of hiring a whole team of high school kids to
Wow.
do most of their assembly work. And these kids really are good at working together. And when you
Hmm.
put them together as a group, they can figure out almost anything. And so that's just a one little microcosm right here from my team of a company who said, oh God, these people are really smart. I should just hire all of them. And they had an extraordinarily good experience to the point that they actually hired several of them permanently.
That's so cool. I believe it too because speaking from a self-interest point of view, I said to myself, like if I would have brought because we have stuff for High Sky like swag, flyers, all of that. I didn't bring any of that because I was just, kind of there to scope it out. But I said if I would have brought like a flyer for the podcast, I mean, we probably would have went viral because every single kid that I talked to, okay, now keep in mind, I'm in hydrogen aviation and we work on like air taxis and drones and things like that. Well, 99.9% of people that I tell that to is like a deer in headlights and they're just like or they're like, "Oh, you're really smart. I don't know what that means. That's out of my league." And they're just totally tuned out.
Mhm.
Not one kid. The kids were asking me, "So what do you do?" And when I told them, they're like, well, they're educated on environmental issues. They were like, "Oh my God, that's so cool. So how does it work? Like through a fuel cell? Are you burning?" I'm like, "Oh, what? Whoa." And that was kid after kid after kid. They were so interested in what I was doing. I have never experienced that. And like when you're in your career field and you're going to different events and you have to do a lot of networking, it gets a little bit old. Your social battery's kind of going down and people are they're professional, but sometimes it's like, I don't know if I even really was listening because you've talked to so many people, but the energy and like the greenness of just like that's why I like fresh engineering because like they were just so interested and I was like, oh, when I come back next year, I'm going to be bringing some stuff to educate them on hydrogen aviation and get them excited about because you guys have built the community there. Any company could thrive that's doing any kind of technology if you just go in there.
Yep.
So yeah, and that's part of the reason I wanted to have you on the podcast because it is very relevant to any industry, to any industry. I mean, they're learning coding, and if you think about, what we look at is like autonomous aircraft. Well, that's a kind of robot, and you're going to need some programming in there, and so. I mean, everything. What other skills? I want to get back to the game in a minute, but what they're probably infinite skills. I mean, but what are some of like the top, what are the technical skills that they
Sure.
learn?
So they're learning. Well, first off, they sort of learn the basic process of how to go through and design something and refine it and debug it.
Mm,
And so though, and that of course applies to just about everywhere.
sure.
The robots uh, are great deal of mechanical systems. So they learn about how to design mechanisms and build mechanisms.
Nice.
A lot of them learn how to fabricate things. This is not high school shop.
Yeah.
This is like actual engineering and using milling machines and doing uh, precise tolerances and
Yep.
things like that. There's a lot of electrical wiring to be done and figuring out the systems. There's a lot of programming. Most of the robots are programmed in Java these days, although there are other languages available. And there's robot vision,
Mm.
and there's a lot of stuff. So those are sort of the technical skills. They also learn how to work with CAD programs. They do a lot of 3D printing. So there's a lot of learning done there. On the slightly non-technical part,
Hmm.
they learn how to communicate extraordinarily
Mm.
well.
Hmm.
And part of that is the confidence that they derive from being around people who are gracious and professional, and they
Hmm.
don't feel like they aren't at risk of humiliation in the first world. That is
Yeah.
part of what gracious professionalism does for the students. Many people are in fear of speaking up and presenting their ideas because of the fear of shame and humiliation. And
Yeah.
that just doesn't happen in the first world.
Yeah.
Even if it's somebody you don't even know, they
Yeah.
will almost always be gracious and talk to you and ask you questions. And that sort of boosts their self-esteem quite a bit. So that's one of the soft skills they learn, is that people are actually interested to hear what you have to say.
Hmm.
And even if you're wrong, you can go ahead and say it. And somebody might say, hey, maybe you want to do it this way instead, and so that whole idea of working together as a team of people without always shooting somebody down is a really important skill that the students learn. These are run like little businesses. Cost about 25 grand or so to do one of these teams if you discount the travel expenses.
Hmm.
And so their teams have to fund themselves, so they have to figure out how to raise that money. So they in addition to doing the technical stuff, they're also working on how to organize their team, how to fundraise for their team, how to go out and sell their ideas to sponsors and corporations. They do a lot of community outreach, and that's baked right into our program. We reward the teams for going out and bringing in others, getting other people involved in FIRST, or exposing others to science and technology, volunteering, and those sorts of things. So they're learning how to sort of interact not only with the tech community, but they're also learning how to interact with their community. And then all of the ancillary things that go with having a team. The graphic design is a big one. A lot of
Hmm.
students do graphic design stuff. They learn how to make, as a first project, getting a student to actually design and then have manufactured the team T-shirts turns out to be especially a young high school student. That's actually kind of a project for them. They have to really think about the details.
Hmm.
They become detail oriented. They become communication oriented. So there's a lot of soft skills and business skills that go alongside all of those technical skills. And the sense of accomplishment that they get from that is really motivating for them.
Yeah. What I heard, I was writing these down, and I saw all of that firsthand. They are essentially becoming mechanical engineers,
Mhm,
also entrepreneurs,
mhm.
and they know marketing. They're becoming entrepreneurs and mechanical engineers. Um, it's it's something as a mechanical engineer with a focus on aerospace. That's what my background is. We did public speaking and presentations and group projects, but we were always competing with each other, in the groups, but there wasn't a lot of overlap between the groups. And we did some manufacturing and we did some of the things you mentioned, but the soft skills weren't developed as much as I felt like they should be. That came like afterwards, and like work experience, and was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how to do this. I mean, like I remember I barely knew how to manage a calendar. And like here I am an engineer and like I don't know how to send a calendar invite. I remember that being like very scary. But yeah, so I saw all of those skills being utilized, and I bet these kids, they got to excel in college probably like way more than their peers. I would assume.
So here's a very common antidote that I've heard many, many, many times over the years. A student goes to, I'll pick on one of my stories. Student went to Johns Hopkins University as a freshman to study mechanical engineering. Walked into a Johns Hopkins lab and asked to get an internship sort of in a college lab, and within the first week, she was running the place.
Oh,
she was
I love it.
she was the only student that walked in that actually had experience actually building something from scratch with tools
Wow.
and the whole schmear. And she went on to she got her mechanical engineering degree. She went to Stanley Toolworks and is now like the director of engineering or something like that.
That's
I don't remember exactly what
that's
she's doing
amazing.
now.
Yeah.
And she started out with us in First Lego League. So First is actually a much bigger program than just the one game. There's two other programs: the First Lego League, which is for younger students, and then the First Tech Challenge is sort of in the middle ground there. And she did all of the programs, went on to Johns Hopkins, but her experience doing First got her many opportunities in college, and she kind of ended up running this lab for a
That's
while.
great.
So I've heard that same basic story at least 100 times over the past 26 years of students who show up at a university in a mechanical engineering degree, and none of the other students have ever actually built anything, right?
And you said something else that really jumped out at me is the two people, the two past, or the two alumni that you're speaking of, I also want to add in for people watching this, I have never been to an event related to science and technology where I saw equal representation everywhere. That was a first for me. It was so refreshing. It felt like we were at a sporting event or a game because because it is a sport, it is a game, but the representation was equal. So, I was showing the videos to my daughter and to my niece, and I'm like, oh, this is totally a family thing from here on out. Like, we are all participating, like, period. Like, this is the coolest thing ever. But I think a lot of people would hear it like, well, robots, and they're going to think, well, that's going to be like boys, and they're going to be like gamers, and maybe they're going to be like rude to me. Cause I don't know, that was my sort of impression before I went, as what I was expecting, just being a female engineer and literally having never had the opportunity to work with other female engineers, until I became an entrepreneur. And so like how lonely that was. And I was like, oh, it's going to be like that. And I was like, we literally teleported into an alternate universe where everything was utopia. I just couldn't believe it. Didn't even feel real. I'm still in shock. So I love that the two examples you're giving were both women, because that was the first thing that I noticed. Like, oh, there's girls here. I love this. Tons.
And part of that is, again, it comes back to our ethic of gracious professionalism. Is girls. It's hard to generalize but I think girls tend to shy away from toxic environments, and they do a much better job on the social skills. They just are more social, and the gracious professionalism enforces that, and it also enforces the fact that engineering is sort of a gender neutral. Unlike the football team where you.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So this is a very gender neutral sport, and it's one where they excel and they're really quite good at it. And honestly, their organizational skills, especially in the 14 to 16-year-old range, their organizational skills are just generally better than the young men. And I hate to throw out stereotypes, but
Well, there's stats, I would say, there's stats. And in fact, when, I don't know, this is probably about a decade ago, so this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart, because my grandfather inspired engineering in me. He was an engineer. He passed away a couple years ago, but he was well into his 90s, but brilliant. And he this is something he would have loved. This is how he was to us. He would always give us games and challenges and puzzles, and we would have a prize. Usually it would be like $5 or something, but it was something we really, really wanted. And we would work together and we would compete these things. And he would just kind of be teasing, but he made it so fun, just how you said when something is celebrated. And we would have rather done that than, go out to ice cream or something like that. We just loved how interactive it was and how proud and excited he would be for us and cheering us on, that it made us want to do it. So that really inspired me to go into engineering. And I didn't really know until I got, into like third, fourth year of college that, whoa, I mean, almost every class I was the only girl.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, that's just school. It's going to be better when I go into the workforce. And it wasn't. It was worse. Or the women that were there, were in like admin or biz stuff, and they weren't ever with engineering. Now I met some really great friends that really helped me through that, but it was, it was quite isolating. So I did a research paper because I was so curious why it was like that. And it turns out that women, not, girls and boys, basically are as attracted to math and science equally until about the ages 10 to 12 and around time puberty comes.
Yep.
And then around that time, and it's a really interesting study. They did like some placebo groups, and they did like so they split like the girls and boys in two different classrooms, and then they treated them equally. And then they had a class where they would say they would choose the boy, like say a boy and a girl raised their hand to answer a question, they would call on the boy before the girl. Or the boy would interrupt and they would call on the boy. And then there was another class where they called on the girls first and not the boys. Anyway, they did all these sorts of things. Well, it turns out that, as you can imagine, when the girls weren't called on or they were kind of interrupted, by the end of that experiment, they tested them before and after. They didn't like math. It was a test on math. And they didn't like math anymore, and they thought they were not good at math. The girls that were called on or were called on equally liked math more than they did before. And the boys didn't really change either way. So it's something as a society that we kind of do. And I remember growing up thinking I was bad at math and saying I don't like math. And I was very good at math. I was my entire life, but it was just so like scary. I don't know where that came from. So actually, just to your point, there's, the statistics are there, and girls do tend to be, not me, on the organization. I'm not one of them, but yeah, I've read studies on that, and I've always wanted to know, like, how do we fix this problem? And you guys are fixing it. So, I mean, that's just, gosh. Ugh.
I don't want to say that we have the solution. That's a very arrogant statement to say, but I
I can
can
say it.
provide enough anecdotal evidence to support the fact that we're doing something right, and we think we know what we're doing. I could be completely wrong, but I think that providing students opportunity, providing them a celebratory and an environment where people are treated with empathy and respect seems to work well. I think state of Washington, which I'm more familiar with than the national number, in general, we're somewhere really close to 40% female participation in what would normally be considered a pretty nerdy sport. Nationally, I think we're around 32%, but don't hold me to that one, but it's pretty
That's
close.
still huge.
Yeah. And the difference over the 26 years that I've been doing this lead me to believe that we have actually changed the culture of the United States. When we first started, it might have been like 4 or 5% girls and almost all boys. And so when we first formed First Washington, I was very cognizant of the demographics, and I wanted to help out. And so there are lots of problems to solve: underrepresentation with Hispanics and African Americans, gender, neurodivergence, and those sorts of things. So I broke the problem down because, hey, I'm an engineer. Let's go with the big one. And I figured, well, um, uh, let's start with gender first, and build up a bigger tent, and then we can start adding in the other things. And so, uh, and if you think about it, gender should have been the easy one because uh, people who are normally supportive of this sort of activity don't just have boys, they also have girls.
Hmm.
And so we were actually able to, in a very short amount of time, by focusing on asking girls, hey, would you like to build a robot? Rather than telling them, here, build a robot, right?
Hmm.
And letting them see things and let them self-select, uh, it was actually relatively straightforward to very quickly increase our number up to over 40%. At one point, we're at 44%. I think we're right around 40% in the state of Washington at the moment.
It's
And first
incredible.
nationally or internationally also had really good growth. It went from, it got up to, it's over 30%, which it is actually not where exactly where we want to be. I don't think we'll ever get to 54% just because uh, there are many, many things for students to self-select,
Hmm.
and yay. But
Yeah.
I'm really happy with what we've done there. And and they are achieving. It isn't that they're just on the team. They are the drivers
Right.
of the robots. Some of them are the presidents of their clubs. In fact, a lot of the really good teams are actually led by girls because they they organize well and they communicate better than the boys do. They just do.
Well, and to your point about representation, that was another research study that I did on where you get toxic work environments. And 100% it is from the top down,
Yep.
and you all have the representation on your board. Trans representation, LGBTQ, African American. I mean, the diversity is there from the top down, and that's where you have to start. And so that is something that you all are nailing. And I know you've done your research on that, and I think that's why it's happening organically because you have the right people involved.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the right mindset. It doesn't matter and it shouldn't matter whether the student's genitalia have nothing to do with their robot, and
Right.
and interestingly enough, uh, first attracts students who don't have other outlets for participation, right?
Hmm.
Most uh, the big sports at the schools are usually oriented toward just boys, so there you
Hmm.
just admitted half the population. But
Hmm.
then the genetic diversity, the neurodivergence, autism spectrum. We have a lot of autistic students. We have a lot of LGBTQ students because they don't really fit into any of the other sports. We have students who are just would be considered shy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We have a very welcoming environment, and quite frankly, you don't have to try out.
Yeah, well, and that was another one of the sessions that I sat in on was the trans session, and again, I was just so impressed with there was a place for everybody. There was a session or a club on like being black and in robotics.
Mhm.
There was just something for everybody, and especially you said something that really made me think about this time in our lives. It's there's a lot of bad things being said about people with respect to sports and a lot of really hurtful things, and so that kind of you guys can be that safety net to say, hey, this is a sport and we welcome you and we want you and we need you, is so huge. And it just, I think it was the first time in my life that I see so many organizations talk the talk, but you don't have to talk the talk. I experienced it. I saw it, and it's like that. This is it. This is it. So I will say that you are changing the world, and that you are fixing the world. First is fixing the world. First is creating the future.
Yeah.
that needs, and I haven't seen anybody else do it. I mean, I haven't met another group or organization where I felt like I want my whole family to be a part of this
Yeah,
ever, ever.
yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely. Welcome to the family.
Yes, thank you.
So, uh, yeah, and I think that one of the more interesting aspects of FIRST is this sense of community and sense of community ownership. So
Hmm.
you see this big event in Houston.
Hmm.
Um, the reality is, all around the world, there are lots and lots of local events that happen. We
Hmm.
try and give it the same sense of awe and wonder. We don't always have the multi-million-dollar light show,
Right,
but
right.
uh, and we try and make sure that it's all about community involvement.
Hmm.
And so, um, even World Championships, there were 1,400 people running that event, and like 1,300 of them are all volunteers who flew in on
Yeah,
their own dime to get
yeah,
there,
yeah.
right?
That's amazing.
Yeah, so these are people who have not only taken time off work, but also put in an enormous amount of money to fly to Houston from, well, I'll pick Seattle, that's quite a ways away. And they paid on their own dime, and they went and spent an entire week helping this program run itself. And it happens at all levels. And
Yep.
it's really a unique thing. And people cherish this program much. And, hey, much like Boy Scouts, there are other great programs out there. We're
Yeah,
not but um, the amount of time and effort that the alumni and the volunteers and the adults put into this is pretty amazing. There are
yeah.
235,000 ish volunteer positions in the first world,
Wow.
and and that is an enormous amount of time. If you just figured out the man hours,
Yeah.
we're all putting in 200 or 300 hours a year. There's millions of hours. And if you figured out the cost of that, it's hundreds of millions of dollars
It
in
is. I mean,
kind time, right?
yeah, is we as a nonprofit, we have volunteers as well, and we track the hours, and it goes into the hundreds of thousands very easily. Now we're very, very small. Nothing, not yet. We're not. We'll grow with first though. We
Yeah.
definitely plan to be there always. But the in kind dollars they add up so quick, and I mean we've had like maybe 15 volunteers in a year. So
Yeah.
in my mind, I was already doing the math like, whoa, whoa. I mean, that's world changing. That is
Yeah.
world changing. And, I met a family. I think I was in the Lego League area. What was the area where they had the poster boards and there was a lot of things about the environment? Was that the
Yeah.
Lego League area?
That was Lego League. So
Okay.
that's Lego League is a program. First Lego League, I should
Hmm.
use the
Yeah.
full title.
Yes.
First Lego League is a program for 9 to 14-year-olds, and
Hmm.
uh, uh, each year there's a theme, and then Lego League involves a research project, and they do a research project and then do a presentation in front of a group of judges, and then
Hmm.
they also build a robot to play a game based on that theme. And the beauty of that program is that it's relatively low cost.
Yep.
Man, 14, 1,500 bucks to get
Hmm.
started and a couple $100 each year.
Hmm.
But it gives the team a project somewhere between 5 and 10 kids, usually
Hmm.
on a first like elite team. And they work out, they do some research, they figure out how to present it. They actually do present it in front
Yep.
of the judges. And it's really the first time that these 9 to 14-year-olds have ever told somebody other than a teacher about something that they've done, and the sense of accomplishment that they get from doing that project is really an intense experience for them.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, they build a little Lego based robot to play on a 4x8 field, and it's very, very well done. And that's one of the, we call it one of our feeder programs that
Hmm.
hopefully those kids will stick with first
Hmm.
for the rest of their career.
Was the
Um,
topic what was this year the theme something environmental?
it was Into the Deep was the theme
Ah,
for the
okay.
year. Into the Deep, so all three. There's another program. I'll So there's also the first tech challenge. The first tech challenge
Yeah.
is for
So I
seventh.
actually, yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I met one of the board members, and her name escapes me, but one of your board members, she goes, was it FTC, FLL, or RC or something? And I was like, I don't know what any of those means, but I do now. Well, there's first Lego League, which is
Yeah.
FLL, and then
Yeah.
first Tech Challenge, which is FTC,
Yes.
which you're about to talk about. Okay, so
Yes. And
yeah,
first tech challenge, that's actually what this the
yay.
robots are about this big.
Yeah, no,
So
I love it. You are the real deal. So while we're on it, while you're talking about Tech Challenge, can you kind of tell us what you have going on? This is your garage at home.
yeah.
This is great.
So um so the uh I have been a mentor for the first tech challenge and for FRC for uh as long as those programs have existed,
Hmm.
except for FRC, I started later. But anyway, it's
And
been about 26 years.
FRC to clarify, the FRC is First Robotics Challenge, which is the big robots,
Yeah.
which is when we do get to the game, when we will, that's that field, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome.
First tech challenge is played on a 12-foot by 12-foot arena.
Hmm.
Four teams on the field. Same sort of idea, Red and Blue Alliance, same random partnerships. And the robots are smaller, sort of designed to be built by more by the high school students. We still mentor them, we still help them
Hmm.
out, but
Hmm.
it's a much more accessible, especially for like maybe a if a school teacher wanted to have that project and wasn't really an engineer,
Hmm.
they can do pretty good. It's
Is
also
that
great.
also a feeder program or is it something
It's a
they
parallel, we'll call it a
okay,
parallel
parallel,
program.
gotcha. Hmm.
Um,
Maybe
uh,
not as technically
oh
technically
no,
challenging. No, it still is. Oh,
oh
okay.
yeah, yeah. And
Uh,
actually, there's some good arguments to be made about which one has more
ah,
technical
okay. Well,
proficiency.
I was because you said maybe a teacher that wasn't an engineer. So that's
Yeah.
why I thought maybe it's not as technical. What made you use that example?
Oh, you can build an FTC robot out of a kit of parts.
Okay.
It's a generic kit. It's like a Rector set, but on
Mm-hmm.
steroids.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are some real and there's multiple choices that
I
you can
see.
get. But some of the kits are very robust,
Mm-hmm.
and or you can design your own. This one you can see it's got like custom parts. So this one the kids catted and we used a CNC machine. So lots of stuff. This let's see, there we go. There's a video camera, so it does vision processing.
Cool.
It has onboard computers. It has a lot. I mean, it's just as sophisticated as an FRC robot. It's just smaller. Um,
Okay.
yeah,
And then is it cheaper to do FTC versus FRC? I guess why would
yeah,
someone the reason I ask because being now, don't get me wrong, the FTC championship was also very exciting and
yeah.
mind-blowing. But when I got to the FRC championship, that was officially my teleportation moment. I was like, whoa. So I guess for me, just I would want to do that one because it's like, well, this is where
Sure.
you know what I mean? And so I guess what would make students or team leads or coaches choose FTC versus FRC?
Well, so FTC teams are usually between 5 and 15 students. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a maximum size of a team.
Okay.
FTC is we have a lot more home-based teams.
Mm-hmm.
So usually FRC teams are associated with a school. Not always. We have
Mm-hmm.
actually in my area, we have several teams that build at home.
Mm-hmm.
This one requires a much smaller field. It's only 12 foot by 12 foot instead of
Mm-hmm.
54, and so there's a lot fewer resources just
Mm-hmm.
logistically with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
Um,
didn't even think about that. You need somewhere to practice.
yeah. And
Yeah,
so this
okay.
one you can practice they've practiced in my garage a number of times,
That's
right?
so cool.
Or we can set it up in the hallway at school.
Mm-hmm.
The FRC, on the other hand, is a bit of a production to set up.
Mm-hmm.
First Tech Challenge is a much more intimate experience for the students because mostly because we don't mentor them quite as hard as we would in FRC. FRC is sort of a collaboration between the students and the mentors in building the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in FTC, we try and let the students run with it,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll provide whatever assistance they need,
Mm-hmm.
or provide ideas and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So
So,
they're both great programs. They both have amazing students with very similar outcomes. They overlap a lot because FTC, a lot of areas run FTC in the fall and FRC in the spring.
mhm.
So
and,
my
and you
teams
know,
for yeah.
yeah, I don't mean to diminish
Oh yeah.
FTC at all. I just
Oh no, not at all.
yeah, I was so let's just say I start a team
Yeah.
in Spring, Texas,
Yeah.
and we have some people from the school, some people from church, and some kids from the neighborhood.
Sure.
None of us know anything what we're doing.
Hmm.
We have, I have some mechanical engineering. I have mechanical engineering experience, but I've never built a robot. I
Sure.
sure as heck have never programmed one.
Yeah.
Where would we start? Who would we, like, I'm asking you right now, what question would you ask us to decide which program we want to do?
Um, uh, it sort of depends uh, on the number of people that you have involved.
So we have, let's see, you'd said we have six. So, okay, that would put us in FTC right there because FRC was minimum 10-ish.
Yeah,
Okay.
you want to have at least 10.
Uh-huh.
And where is it that you intend to build? Now, if you're going to do it out of a school
Mm-hmm.
that has a shop,
Mm-hmm.
then you might look at either one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, People tend to find that FTC is a little bit easier to jump into first with.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not such a steep climb. It
Mm-hmm.
is technically, I mean, they on the technical side, you learn the same skills, and so there's um, there's there's a lot of opportunity for doing things in a 3D with 3D printing. So this one has a lot of 3D printed
Mm-hmm.
parts on it.
Mm-hmm.
FRC, we still 3D print a lot, but the robots are pretty big and heavy, and 3D printed parts sometimes aren't as durable, although they're
Right.
getting way better
Right. Right.
with the carbon fiber
Oh, I know it.
impregnated nylon and stuff. It's miraculous. But and then and generally, do you have enough mentors?
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so uh, interestingly enough, a lot of the best teams in FTC are home based,
Uh-huh.
um, uh, mostly because they can do this 7 days a week. They're not
Yeah.
tied to a school,
Yeah,
and
and
so
so that helps me a lot.
yeah,
Especially thinking, I mean, okay, it would probably be my garage.
yeah,
And I mean, it's a two-car garage, but
plenty.
the FRC robots are pretty big.
Yeah,
And so I could see it being much, especially when you're putting it together, it would easily take up the whole garage, just
yeah,
spreading things out and stuff like that. So it would probably just be easier. And then also having the ability to have the kids over on Friday night and work on it late. I can definitely see that. So, okay, that really helps me because I was struggling to see where that fit into. So the first Lego lead can feed into FTC or FRC.
yeah,
Okay, got it.
yeah.
Awesome.
Um, uh, the um, and just for kicks,
Hmm.
um, let's see. Can I just click on this and then I can? Whoa,
Let
be
me make
quiet.
sure you have
I
shared.
won't do the audio, but just because we brought up FTC,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
going
of
to share
course.
my screen real quick,
Yes, you bet.
and let's share this screen, and let me make it big. So this is the first tech challenge. So this one is played on a 12 by 12 field, and you can see on the right side is the red alliance, on the left side is the blue alliance,
Hmm.
and the students are currently driving. Um, it's called teleoperated, and
Okay.
the goal of this game is for them to take those blocks there, and they're doing a couple of things with them. One
Hmm.
of them is they're putting them in these high goals up here,
Hmm.
like in the upper left, And then the other thing they can do is they can attach a clip and then go clip it to the side of this railing over here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a great challenge. And these are this game is all about what's called cycle time, minimizing the amount of travel that they need to do and maximizing their scoring potential.
Okay, can we
And
pause really quick?
sure,
So let's talk about who's doing what as the students. What is their role?
sure,
I can obviously see a couple of drivers,
yeah,
um, and then you know how you talked about earlier. They're randomly matched with their alliance team. So could you go
sure,
over like this is a team, this is a team, and they're working together, and
sure.
just yeah, that'd be awesome.
So you're looking at four teams.
Yep.
In the lower left here, there are three students standing, and
Mm-hmm.
then there's one kneeling down. And this is the person who's kneeling down with their arm in the field. That's called the human player. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's usually the makeup of an FTC team is two drivers, a coach, and a human player. The human player is introducing some complicated field elements into the game,
Mm-hmm.
and there are rules about not interacting with your robot directly, but
Mm-hmm.
that's sort of what's going on. So you've got that group. In the upper left, there's another four students,
Mm-hmm.
or actually, it might be three students, and you can see they've got game pads. They're like Xbox game pads,
Yep.
and that's what they're driving. So each one of these is controlling one of the robots.
And then are those two on the left, are they alliance
Yes,
together? Okay. Oh, that's right, because so so there there are four robots. So
yeah,
okay, so the two in the bottom left, they're controlling one of the robots, and then the two in the upper left are controlling one of the other ones. And then how do you know which robots they're controlling?
so each robot has a number on it, right
Okay,
down
they're
here.
uh-huh.
And it's really hard as a spectator to figure out which, unless you know the team, it's hard to tell which group is controlling which
Okay,
robot.
gotcha. Because I was like, and how long did you participate in it before you were like, I got it, I got the game, I understand? Was it because
Oh, it doesn't take long at all.
okay, okay,
Yeah, yeah. And the games are not human experiences, right?
yeah,
So one year we had like a basketball based game, and
uh-huh.
and it was kind of fun to watch, but then you realize that, well, robots really aren't good at playing basketball. So to the spectators it was a little underwhelming because
Ah,
it's like, well, just score, right? And
yeah,
yeah. So a lot of the games are a little bit on the contrived side.
mm,
This one is called uh, uh, this game is called Into the Deep. That's what it is. Um,
okay,
yeah. So and it follows the underwater theme, the
gotcha.
dive theme. So on the right side, you can see same. It's a mirror of the left side.
Hmm.
There's the human player in the upper left. There's only one human player station here, and so the kids uh, are driving. It looks like they only have one driver here. It
Mm,
isn't required to have two
I
drivers.
see.
Sometimes they get away with one.
Hmm.
So if I let this run for a sec, uh, so these machines are just miraculous.
Yeah.
That high school students did this in just a few weeks.
Wow. And then how do they score?
So the scoring in this one, so each of these yellow blocks going up here, I'm gonna butcher the numbers, but let's go with those are 6 points. The middle is 3 points. I believe hanging. So see, this guy's got a block on a clip, and see him hanging up here.
Hmm.
So they have to go up and actually attach this to that crossbar.
Mm.
And I'm going to butcher the numbers again. Let's call it 5 points for the top bar and
Um,
6 points or half the points for the bottom bar.
mhm.
Um, and then and then they get 1 point or 6 points each for one of these. And then at the end they have to hang off of the structure. So the robots have to be able to lift themselves off, and you get some points for the middle bar and more points for the top bar.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
So
I
there's
could. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So there's usually some sort of hook right at the end that that is right down to the wire. The exciting games, you go right down to the wire to see the end game, right?
Do you get any additional points if your robot hangs quicker than the other ones?
No, it's
Okay.
the state at the end of the game.
Okay. Got
Yeah.
it. So you basically just want to keep scoring as much as you can possibly score and then get your robot up there before the timer goes.
Yep. Now,
Okay.
this was the world championship match. These teams did extraordinarily well and got they had very high scores. Let's see where was the scores? Yeah. So this one, this is I believe this is turned out to be the world record high score, 514 points or something like that. So this is the best of the best. A normal high school struggles with this competition. These guys did very, 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 very well. So
Interesting. Well, and I remember when we were watching, and I know that was a world record for FTC.
yeah,
Because when I was with you at
yep,
FRC, we experienced a world record.
yes,
Because
we
you let
did.
me know, said that's a world record. And I was like, oh, and I
Yep.
might even have that on video. I hope I do. If I do, I'll show it right here.
It would be Einstein. It would be yeah. I'm still sharing.
Yeah, yeah, uh-huh.
For those of you who haven't seen this, this is FRC, and you can tell the robots are much bigger. And we'll go into the details of this game, but it's the same sort of idea. We got the blue alliance on the left, the red alliance on the right. There's a whole bunch of scoring objects out there, and these teams are working together to generate scores for their alliance. So the Newton division and the Johnson division, this is the finals. So and you can see these scores up here are uh, for all three robots combined. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see down here on the lower left, well, the video work here. So you can see that here, these are the drivers of the Blue Alliance, and these are over here on the bottom right is the drivers for the
Okay.
Red Alliance. Unlike other sports where, you throw the football and the camera guy follows the football,
Yeah.
it's easy to, here, everybody's scoring all at once. So this is actually a very difficult thing to video.
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that, and it's also difficult to follow. So I found myself looking at the screens and back and just having to like reorient myself.
Yeah.
But obviously you can follow it because the kids and everybody would be cheering, and I'm still like, okay, wait, what happened?
When you've been involved with the building and the playing of these games, you become good at it. Luckily, visually, you can sort of tell that, oh, there's a whole bunch of these things, and it appears to be the goal to stack those on. So they're filling these things up and getting lots of points. Yay! That's kind of the way to look at it. And oh, look, they put a bunch of stuff up here. That must have been good. Yay!
Yeah, but also they can go across and knock each other out. So I thought, well, this is nice that they're being kind. I'm thinking, well, at least they're not tearing up these robots. And as soon as I had the thought, boom, and I was like, oh, they're allowed to fight. Okay,
Yep.
interesting.
And you'll notice how over here on I'm going to back up just one sec here. Okay, so notice how these robots move, right? They're like 2910 here. They're using something called swerve drive, which means the four wheels turn independently, and so they can cause themselves to rotate and turn. And it's an extremely effective way of driving. And actually, 2910, this robot right here, is from my area. It's actually Jackson High School in Mill Creek, Washington.
Nice.
One of their alumni designed the swerve drive that all of these teams are using,
Oh, wow.
and has quit his job at Boeing and become a full-time manufacturer of swerve drives.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So there's the entrepreneurship sort of thing going on. But you can sort of, when you're watching one of these games, you just sort of get the feel for what seems to be the goal and the
Yeah,
scoring.
yeah, that makes sense.
And these are and again, we're watching the finals
Sure.
of the big game, and this is an exceptionally high score.
Yeah, yeah.
And then at the end, just like they did in FTC, you can see they're hanging at the end.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sort of the carrot. The right at the end, they're right down to the last second, and then they jump up, and that's worth a lot of points, and that usually determines the actual winner of the game. And so you can see them on the lower right there. There they are. So that's Team 2910.
Yeah. Yep.
um, and so they just realized that they won. Ah, there we go.
Cool. Yeah, that I mean, yeah, for people watching, I mean, even just you got to be there in person. So that was cool. So that's still a record. Will that remain the record until does somebody have to break that at first championship?
Nope, that was it.
Okay.
That was the end.
I
Uh,
mean, if like how would somebody set a new record? Could it be
they
that
won't.
they won't?
Nope. They may do it in an off-season competition, but everybody takes that a little bit of a grain of salt because people
Okay.
tend to change the rules slightly.
Okay, gotcha,
Yeah.
gotcha. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm.
and it turns out that the match that you and I saw, they got 301 points. That was actually the theoretical maximum number of points you could get. So it's not possible to get more than 301
Wow, so
points.
they were basically perfect.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and you're saying nobody can ever beat it because the game will be different every year?
Yep.
Okay, I got it. That's cool. So
Yeah.
they're officially they're the true championships.
They're the true
I
champions. And
love
then,
it.
yeah, because just for, and we'll talk about the game in specific, but here is Einstein from last year, just
Mm-hmm.
to give you a flavor of how different the games are.
Mm-hmm.
So in this game, it was based on it's called a game called Crescendo, and it
Mm-hmm.
was based on music. And
Oh,
so the game again contrived. They're picking up these things called notes. Um, let's
that
see,
would have
where
been
are
my jam. I love music.
so they have to pick up these rings. I'm trying to find a picture of a ring.
Mm-hmm.
The notes are these orange. Where are they? Well, you can see them. They're shooting them up into this thing. They don't have a really great shot of the scoring element, and it moves so fast.
Uh-huh.
But they pick up these scoring elements and shoot them into various goals. So
Mm-hmm.
right. So that just goes. And my point of showing you this was just that the games are dramatically different every year. We'll just show you one other one. This was FTC. I want here we go. This one was called Charged Up. Again, uh, a rather contrived game, but they had to pick up cones and stack them over on this scoring thing.
Mm-hmm.
So the rules are completely different. The robots one year don't really apply to the next year. So the technology does. So
Mm-hmm.
the swerve drive is still very popular. There are various things that have been developed over the years that teams tend to reuse. But game very much different every year. And for those who hadn't seen the thing, we were talking about the big room full of people. There are 35,000 people watching this. There, that's one side of the stands. There's a whole nother side right behind where the camera
Oh,
is.
and I gotta tell you a funny story. Sorry to interrupt. Please
Go
finish
ahead.
that. Okay, so Ainsley and I, we knew that it was over. There was a champion, and so we decided we better leave so we could beat the crowd. So we were hungry. It was a long day, and so we walked over to the Marriott.
Mhm.
I think it was the Marriott, their little restaurant, like burger place there.
Yeah.
And it's like right there on the corner, and there's windows, so you can see the convention center from inside. And they had the two big screens, both with packed, by the way, packed. Everybody watching it from the restaurant, and then somebody came to work, or the manager said there's some kind of game on. I think it was basketball. It might have been finals. I don't remember if finals were happening yet or not. But anyway, there was another sporting event that they had to put on, and the people in the restaurant, and
Yeah.
And so, I mean, in a joking, nice way, but we're like, can you please put it back on? And like, there were kids in there, like, that's our friend. Like, some parents were like, that's my kid. And they had to leave because they had a baby to tend to or something. So they wanted to watch it somewhere. But I mean, and there were even people around the windows watching. So it was packed in there. And
Yeah.
anywhere that had a TV around was watching it. And anyway, needless to say, they had to call the manager of the restaurant and they put it back on for us. We were not going to have it. And so it was, it was just that big of a deal.
Yeah.
So we got to see the confetti and all of that from the restaurant. And we left right before that. But even there, the energy continued. So sorry to interrupt what you were saying, but I just
No
wanted to,
problem.
it wasn't just in there. It was everywhere in the vicinity.
And the whole place sounds like a rock concert. I mean, they've got really good DJs. It's really pumping. The people are up dancing and cheering. And hey, it's really great to see nerds get up and dance.
Yeah.
If you've ever, I don't want to say that they're good at it, but the entire environment, again, social shields are down.
Yep.
Nobody feels like a fool by getting out and dancing.
Yeah, they are totally out of their shell. That was
Yeah.
one of my favorite things from it. Just speaking of people coming out of their shell, and this is the only sport where everyone can go pro. It is okay. I kept saying this like at first, like at the beginning of me being there, like, oh my God, this is like a real sport, and everybody would say it is a
It
real
is.
sport. And so after I went to the championship, I'm finally like, oh, it is a real sport. But for people that haven't been, I'm going to tell you, it is a real sport. There are announcers, and it is not a bad setup. I mean, it is professional. There's announcers, there's camera people everywhere. There are referees everywhere. There's safety things in place. It is a real sport. And it was the first time that I was ever treated like VIP at a sport. So that was just an amazing experience, but it is the real deal.
So this goes all the way back to our theory of change, is that we are there to celebrate what these students have done. And um, so we're going to celebrate them. It's a combination light show, rock concert, sporting event. It is every bit as exciting as anything that you've ever been to before, if not a little bit bigger. And it turns out this, I believe, is the only high school sport that has a world championship.
Oh,
Uh,
cool.
and actually, most sports stop at state level,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
this is the only one that has a world championship to go to.
That's great. And I forgot I was gonna say my favorite thing was when the students are having like a big moment, they would get a close up and they're
Mhm.
on the big screens. And it was so special to see how they would light up when they would see themselves like, they were
Yep.
a celebrity sports athlete because they are. And that was so cool. I loved seeing that. I just loved
Absolutely.
seeing that. That was so fun.
And I'd also just like to point out real quick, I'm going to share my screen one more time.
Yeah, go for it.
Um, uh, I think it's also worthwhile to point out that, there's all these officials around here. There's a
Mhm.
whole bunch of, there's referees, and there's an entire staff of people back here that are running the game in the field. And there's photographers. Now, the video people are the only ones that are actually getting paid. Every one of these other people are all volunteers. They come from
Wow.
all across the world,
Wow.
and they generally pay their own way to come here and do this from Wednesday through Saturday. It's grueling. It's a lot of work. You're dead tired when you're done, and they come back and do it week after. I want to say year after year, but the reality is they come here year after year, but at home they're doing this week after week. They'll do
Wow.
this usually 5 weeks in a row. Um,
Wow.
there,
Oh yeah,
some of
that's
these
right, because they have to compete to make it to the championship.
well,
So,
well, the volunteers.
mhm,
Yeah, the students have been competing, so they've
mhm.
been doing that as well. But all of these volunteers, they're giving up literally weeks of time every year to do this. And some of these people have been doing it as long as I have, like 25 years. So hopefully that can convey to you some of the value that those of us who have been doing this a long time put into this. We're willing to, on our own dime, come do this stuff and uh, and continue to do it week after week after week. because it's the right thing to do.
Well, you know what? Let's keep this screen up for a second,
Yeah.
and I want to ask you a question. Usually I save this towards the end, but we're gonna do it now. I want to know, Kevin, what's your background? I mean, I know that you're in development at Microsoft, but
Yeah.
before that, what was your upbringing like, and who sparked this in you? Because
Mm.
there's a special kind of person that feels a calling to pass science and technology to the next generation.
Yeah.
And I know that somebody did that for you. And so, what does that look like? Do you have siblings? What were your parents like? Tell me that backstory.
So I was born in Kirkland, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle. My dad was he was a drafting technical illustrator for Boeing. So he was an amazing drawer of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was young, uh, I learned how to draw things. And if we were bored, we'd sit around and he'd teach me how to do perspective drawings and stuff like that. Um, I was not really an academic kid. Well, I was in the first kindergarten, first grade, second grade. Uh, I was really good at math, and
Only
so
kid,
I would.
only child?
No, I have a middle child, older brother, younger sister.
Okay.
Um, uh, I did they gave me the math book when I was in first grade, and I finished it in a week. And then I did the second grade math book, and then the third grade math book. In my second year of school, they gave me the second grade math book again, and then the third grade math book, and then the fourth grade math book, and I finished all those in like 3 weeks. And then the third grade, they gave me the same books again. And so it got really boring, right? And I don't know. I was always a tinkerer. I loved to build things. I loved to I became an electronics nerd like in the sixth grade. I tried to get my ham radio license, but the reality is I was kind of a nerd, right? And it was sort of weird. So I was the weird kid. And so no outlet whatsoever. I was not interested in sports ball, whatever that was. And uh, so I kind of always did my own thing. Um, I actually thought I was going to be a cabinet maker. I was really good in shop. I was really good at building things. I and so when I got out of high school I graduated from high school and I actually got some sort of award. I had no idea that it even existed. I got the Industrial Arts Award, whatever that meant, at graduation. So I had like gold braids and stuff. I don't know.
Cool.
And then in my goal to be a cabinet maker, I graduated right in the middle of a recession and couldn't find work as a cabinet maker. And plus, I was just out of high school. I mean, I was probably pretty good at it, but I certainly wasn't a journeyman. Uh, and I ended up going to college and I became a theater major and loved it. I did the technical
Now,
stuff.
now hold on.
Yeah,
That's a big pivot. Okay,
that is a huge pivot.
so were you into anything artsy in high school? Did you?
Shop. Yeah,
Wow, yeah, that is art. Actually, when you said what was it,
industrial arts. Yeah,
industrial arts, I pictured like architecture, and then I'm like, well, that's a form of art to me. I don't know if that was like
but
that,
like
but
the wood lathe, and I used to make all sorts of really cool things, mostly out of
hmm
wood and metal.
hmm
But I'd make I don't have any in my room here, but like goblets and little things
Cool.
on the wood lathe. It was all
Okay.
pretty. So then,
Okay.
but the technical theater. So the theater degree was actually technical theater. I did sound, lighting, set construction. I wasn't really an
Mm.
actor.
hmm
Uh,
hmm
and then I got almost all the way through college. Now, in the background, still a nerd, still playing with the electronics, bought a Commodore VIC-20 in 1981 and realized I really like to program these things, right? So I'm
hmm
doing that as a hobby
hmm
and going to school for theater. And then you fast forward a little ways and then I had a conversation with a guy who was a also in the technical theater, and he told me how much money he made after 30 years, and I went, "Oh, oops."
Yeah.
So I did the most obvious thing ever. I switched from a theater major to computer science because
Mhm.
what an obvious transition that was, right?
Well, hey, you know what? I switched from being a rapper and music producer to aerospace engineering
There you go.
for the same, many of the same reasons that you just described. But it's like, well, it's yeah, it's funny. Maybe a slight overcorrection, but it's okay. We're happy we did it. So please continue on.
So then I got a computer science degree from the University of Washington, and I sort of specialized in operating systems in college, and then I got recruited by Microsoft right out of college, and I worked on Windows. Well, actually, I started on an operating system called OS/2 that like 10 people in the world remember.
Never
It
heard
was
of
a
it.
yeah, it was a joint venture with IBM and stuff. It was a great experience, great operating system. But Windows NT was my next gig, and so I worked on when you take a Excel spreadsheet and paste it into a Word document. So all of the code that allows that to happen was what the group I led did all of that.
Nice.
Yeah,
Very
and
cool.
then so now my retrospective of why I should have been an engineer in the first place but didn't know it is directly related to the fact that I didn't have anybody to mentor me in high school. My biggest mentor in high school was my shop teacher, Bob Cole, great guy. Inspired me to learn on my own, do all sorts of things. I had like 7 shop classes my senior year. I really wasn't academic at all. The switch to computer science, it took me 7 years to get through college, which is fine. And once I had a reason to do the hardcore math and the rest of it, it was all really straightforward, right? Without a reason to do all of that mathy stuff, why am I learning this? Nobody can
Yeah.
tell me why, right?
How far did you have to go in math for computer science?
I got all the way to
Get through to you.
linear algebra. I did the full calculus series, linear algebra. Um, uh,
Have you ever used any of that in your career? What's the most have you ever used I haven't used calculus since college.
no,
Yeah.
in fact,
I've now algebra all the time.
yeah,
But yeah, so I'm like, well, okay.
I I never used a floating point. Well, okay, so granted, I worked on the operating system. I did a lot of bit twiddling,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And I
uh-huh.
wrote an assembler and stuff. But the reality is, I never actually used the divide operator ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I never used a floating point number.
Hmm.
Um, I uh, Now it's very interesting to me the linear algebra with the matrices and stuff. That's how AI works.
Yep,
So
yep.
I'm glad that I have all that background. I use all of that background. I'm also an economics nerd, so I
Hmm.
look at rates of change and all the rest of that stuff. So, but I think retrospectively, as I think about myself as a high school student and a college student, why I got attracted to this theater thing was I was trying to be an engineer and just didn't know it. I
Hmm.
liked I as much as I liked the building of stuff, I actually liked the planning of the building of the stuff.
Hmm.
I liked working out all of the details and when you're building cabinet stuff, how the joints are going to work and in my mind projecting in advance how drawers are going to work and the cabinets and so there was a lot of planning, the choice of the details about the details about the fit and the finish and all the rest of that stuff. In
Hmm.
the theater, it was all about planning out the production, all the
Hmm.
lighting cues,
Hmm.
what the things had happened in certain times, how to get certain effects to work out, right? And so it was just a lot of engineering and planning and execution. And so as I look back, I was trying really hard to be an engineer, and I just didn't know it.
I want to rephrase. I want to reframe that. I
Yeah.
want to reframe and say you were and are an engineer. You just didn't know it. You always were. An engineer is not something with a stamp, a degree
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah.
If you're building things and inventing things and creating things, you are an engineer. So next time
Yeah.
you say that story, I was an engineer. I just didn't know it. You definitely were an engineer and are. And so are I think some of the best engineers that I've ever known have that very story. They just didn't know that they were engineering.
Yeah.
So yes, you definitely were an engineer. So would you
and
say,
it
yeah,
and
go ahead.
I also tried a lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm,
so I'm a bit of a polymath. I'm pretty good. I'm My expertise is in software,
mm-hmm,
but I'm actually pretty good as a machinist. Again, from my industrial arts
mm-hmm,
time
mm-hmm.
in school, I'm pretty good with electronics. You can see my electronics bench here,
Yep.
and I do other things. I'm also an economics nerd. I mean, I have a wide range of interests and stuff, and all of that stuff sort of like funnels together
Mm-hmm.
because I'm kind of a teacher as
Yep.
well,
Yep.
and so I spend a lot of time talking to young people about things, and I my economics gets pulled into that about, what are job prospects and where does it look like the economy's headed and
Mm-hmm.
how does the economy actually work.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things that went into that, and I try and make sure that my students understand that, and I try to make sure that I give them opportunities to try things all over the place,
Right.
to find what it is that they're going to find their passion in.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm a
do
big
you
believer in passion.
so do you think that you found your calling in this as sort of maybe something that you wish you had had when you were younger but didn't?
Oh, I would
Mm.
have been all over first. I would have
Mm-hmm.
been,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
I
Uh,
can I see that for myself as well. I definitely get that. Um,
so here's the beauty of first.
yeah.
I'm going to pick a 2014. The 24 kids are on this team.
Mm-hmm.
8 of them are nerds. They're great. They're
Mm-hmm.
they're 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 nerdy. They probably already know how to code. They're super hyper focused and super interested on something. Love them to death. That's not our target audience.
Mm-hmm.
The next 8, I call them the nerd curious.
Mm-hmm.
They're might be nerds, but they're not quite sure yet, right? And they
Mm.
would like to try some of this stuff out. They're
Mm-hmm.
interested. They have a severe interest in trying it. Great. Love them to death. It's actually not our target market.
Mm.
The last 8 are what I call the hangers on. They're
Mm-hmm.
somebody's girlfriend or boyfriend, somebody who
Mm.
doesn't have anything else to do at school,
Mm.
somebody who feels really shut out by the
Mm.
traditional school cycle.
Mm.
Maybe they're on the spectrum somewhere, right? And or they just really don't know. And I call those the hangers on. That's our target market. If you want to increase the number of scientists and engineers in the world, you need to target that last group of 8 kids because the other ones we're going to get there eventually. The nerdy kids were going to be engineers anyway, love them to death. They're an incredibly important part of this entire ecosystem. But the real change happens in the hangers on. And it is the reason that I keep coming back to do this is watching the spark that happens in the young woman who showed up because her friends were there, and I hand her a power drill and she drills a hole in a piece of aluminum and goes, "Oh, that was cool. Can I do it again?" And I'll just let her drill as many holes as she wants. And she starts to realize that this is actually in her wheelhouse. She actually could have done this. And then they almost immediately want to start doing other things. They want to start cutting things. They want then you let their juices start flowing. And when those kids become engineers, I know that I've made a difference. And but it takes that entire group because it turns out that the hangers on is usually where the social skills are.
Mm-hmm.
um,
You
Not always, but
Yeah.
usually.
You gave me chills and I got a little teary-eyed because you just described me to a T. And I never even used my first power tool until I was married and we weren't allowed. Now, I always wanted to build stuff when I was a kid, so I would sneak in but my dad was really strict and didn't want us playing with this stuff in the shop, in the garage. But I built an entire go-kart.
Yeah,
I was like 11, no kit, anything, just with spare junk. It didn't have a motor or anything, but you could steer it. And then my
yeah,
sister and I took it up to the top of a hill and rolled it down, and we crashed. We're lucky we didn't get hurt. And it broke apart, but we that's all we wanted to do. We only wanted to do it once. And I mean, we were just crying, laughing in the we were on a grassy area, so we didn't get injured. We're lucky, um, but I didn't. We just wanted to mess around with stuff. We didn't get to use any power tools. And then when I was married, my husband was like, "You don't know how to use a drill?" I'm like, and I was like, no, nobody's ever shown me. And I was really embarrassed. And he was like, come on, do this. And then I was like, just like you described, I was like, this is so fun. So then I
No,
was
yeah.
like, and then I was like, I don't want to use it because it hurts my wrist. And he's like, you got to turn down the torque. And then I'm like, he's like, he taught me all what the things do. I'm like, oh, you're right. It doesn't hurt now. Okay. It doesn't feel like I'm going to, pull my hand off. And so, but that made me not afraid of tools and
Yeah.
that I really quite like doing things like that. And so you totally just described me. And you also answered one of my questions from earlier that I didn't get a chance to ask, which was, what if nobody really knows? I basically have this group of girls that need something to do over the summer. How do we know, if that's the thing? Goodness, that made me tear up because you guys are so on it. You are so on it. And also something you said, I mean, you have a lot of similarities with Dean Kamen with this lighting. I mean, I don't know if you've heard like his story and background on how he got into this, but he also started tinkering and building and doing lighting and
Hmm.
didn't perform well academically. And um there's just so many similarities. And it's so crazy because when you are that person, you think you're the only one in the world like that. And like, turns out maybe we're the majority.
Very
Mm,
much so. Yep.
mm,
And,
mm.
you know, that is, I got gray hair now, right? I can look back and have a little introspection about what it was like to be a teenager. I still remember it. There, all of the, and all of it's real. But as I look back at all the angst that I put into trying to be figured out how to get accepted by somebody, uh, the the girl I had a crush on turns out, yeah, she had a crush on me too. We didn't find out until our 40th reunion.
That's funny. Well, that's how my husband and I he's passed away now, rest in peace, but we were in band in high school and we didn't know that we liked each other until like 15 years later we
Uh-huh.
reconnected. So yeah, and he was very much like that as well. Just a tinkerer and kind of all those things kind of left out. And it's like so interesting when you find out that you're a nerd and you think you're the only one or you think you're just weird. And I was weird, but turns out a lot of people are weird.
Everybody's weird.
Yeah, everybody's
That's
weird.
the beauty of being my age is you realize, oh yeah, it turns out we were all nerdy and weird, but we just
Yeah.
didn't know it,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And
Uh-huh.
even the really popular, I mean, the cool, the A-list crowd from my high school years. Now that we're all older, we start talking about stuff back then. It turns out that I was always in awe of them, and they were always in awe of me because I was so nerdy. But and so that is the joy of working with the high school kids, and especially in an environment like this,
Hmm.
is they can let their inner nerd fly and try stuff. Because I think the key to the whole thing is trying stuff. You
Yeah.
got to drill a bunch of holes in things. You need to burn some stuff out. You need to run uh, you need to run your go-kart down the hill and crash a few times, right?
Yeah.
Uh, and kids these days, they don't really get those opportunities like they did when I was young.
Yeah.
Uh, and uh, uh, and so that's why programs like this. I mean, reality is that the kids show up. Even the juniors and seniors who come in late. I have to. This is a slot screwdriver and this is a Phillips screwdriver. Look, they're
Hmm.
different, right? And
Hmm.
really, honestly, many of them have never even used a screwdriver
Yeah. Yeah.
because nothing needs fixing anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Sort of the perils of our modern, efficient, inexpensive way of building things is, you know,
Yeah.
when I was a
Yeah.
kid, you had to take the lawnmower apart every year just to get it to work.
Yeah. Oh goodness. Speaking of which, I just bought an electric lawnmower and I'm so grateful to not have to worry about dislocating my shoulder.
Yay, lucky start.
Yeah, yeah. But I really want to go. I'm going to give you like, let's see, maybe in 3 minutes,
Yeah,
if you can explain the game, and I'll
sure,
try not to ask too many questions. I'm going to go back to the whiteboard,
sure.
and let's see. I think this is it. Okay, cool. All right, there we are. Let's go back to the whiteboard, and then I'll ask you a closing question.
Sounds great. So I'm going to zoom us in a little bit. Does that
Okay.
zoom on your side as well?
Mm, it hasn't, but
No. Okay. Well,
yeah.
there we go. There it is. I got it.
Okay, cool.
All right. So, if you'll remember before, we had, let me put the arrows back in the right spot. So, we saw where the students were driving. And
Hmm.
there's each slot is for each team. This is the blue alliance, it's the red alliance. So the theme of the year was derived from a game design contest that happened during COVID. And actually, another one of my local teams, Issaquah High School, came up with a concept very similar to this, and then first made it into a game. So it's called Reefscape, and so the idea is that there's a little bit of theme to it. This is a reef down here, and the reef has currently been plugged up by algae because of climate change and pesticides and stuff. And so the goal is to clear out the algae and then restore the reef by installing coral onto the
Mm.
reef. So there is sort of there's a story that goes with the game. Is it a perfect story? No, but it's close enough. Okay.
Yep.
So the idea is that you'll get 3 robots on the field, and their job is to fill the reef with coral to restore the coral, and also to take the algae out of the water and put it up here. And this top part up here is called the barge. And the idea is that if you get the algae out of the water, and we'll go dispose it somewhere, right? And then rebuild the coral reef. And then at the end of, that is the primary task of this game, is to do is to restore the ecosystem here.
And the robots are doing it on their own side, like on the
The
blue
robots
side.
generally, in this game, generally the
Hmm.
robots stayed on their own side. It
Hmm.
is permissible to
Hmm.
go to the other side and play defense,
Hmm.
which usually means sort of getting in the way. And
Can
we
you
have
take
rules.
coral off?
No, you cannot descore.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And that's called a major penalty, and you really,
Uh,
really don't want to do
because
that.
you're messing up the ecosystem.
You're messing up the
I
ecosystem,
see.
and we've considered it ungracious and professional to descore somebody else's.
Sure, sure. But you can block them.
Yeah,
Is that about all you can? I mean, I did see them bump. They can be somewhat aggressive.
they can be very aggressive.
Hmm.
They can be very aggressive. Whoops, I may have clicked on the wrong thing. Well, we'll see what happens. So uh, uh, the robots start out. The first 15 seconds are autonomous, which means that the robots are using sensors and uh, algorithms to navigate. Now, new in the past, say 4 or 5 years, they've come up with shared packages that do some really sophisticated navigation. And so they're actually able to uh, program the robots to follow waypoints. And it does it engineers, hey, we're using Bezier curves to like smooth the stuff. And so they'll say, well, I want you to go to this position and be at this angle, and that's called a pose. And so you can define the poses that you want. In addition to that, they all have onboard video cameras, and this thing right here is called a vision target. Let me do that in yellow. So this thing here is a vision target, and they're called April tags, and each one of them are unique, and the robots can use those to figure out where they are on the
Hmm.
field
Hmm.
autonomously. And so you'll see that some of the teams, especially the world champion teams, are exquisite in their automated playing of the game. So
Hmm.
first 15 seconds, you get extra points for doing all of the tasks. You get more points for the corals, you get more points for the algae and stuff. Um, After 15 seconds, the kids step forward and now they're driving. And for many of them, they're driving with game pads and stuff. And it's sort of a conglomeration of working with your alliance partners to get certain things done to try and stay out of each other's way.
Hmm.
Again, they're grabbing the algae, throwing up in onto the barge, and then they're also grabbing coral. The coral is fed from this corner station down here, and the coral is really just a chunk of PVC pipe,
Yeah.
but it has to be put on these pipes, and that's actually a lot harder than it looks.
No, I was watching. I was like, oh my gosh, it looks like kind of stressful. You have to be very patient.
Yeah, uh,
Yeah.
and Uh, you can, like I said earlier, you can go over to the other side and get in people's way. You'll also see these robots rush over and grab algae from the opponent's side and
Hmm.
bring it back and put it in their goal. So you
Ah,
get steal
okay.
points.
Okay. So you can
Um,
take points, you just can't D-score.
yes, yes. Yeah, and you could go get their coral as well if you need it, but it turns out there's enough over here for a full load.
Oh, I
So
see. So you wouldn't
there
need
wasn't a
to.
whole lot of stealing of coral, but there was a lot of stealing of algae.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
and again, these are really fast machines. These things can drive about 20 miles an hour across the field, which
Yeah.
uh, and they can run into each other at a closing rate of 40 miles an hour. So they're really built ruggedly,
Hmm.
and hopefully,
Hmm.
you do. And hey, there are high school projects. You see stuff break all the time, but it's great fun. At the end of the game, um, after you've loaded up all of the coral, and by the way, if you achieve certain tasks like filling up I think it was filling up 5 of these reefs totally, you got a thing called a ranking point,
Hmm.
which ranked you higher in the score than the teams who didn't.
Hmm.
And the other thing is that you would hang from these cages, and those cages you had to be all the way off the ground, and there was a high cage and a low cage. And it turns out the low cage was worth more because you can't, it's really hard to hang from because it's really low to the ground. And so when you watch the videos of these things, you'll see the teams would actually get the cage to sit horizontally and grab onto it in
Hmm.
such a way that they could lift themselves up just 6 inches rather than having to lift full height.
Oh, wow.
And then there's another human player up here at this station, and there was another thing called a cooperation point. And we
Hmm.
love the game. Oftentimes has something where both the red alliance and the blue alliance, if they do something,
Hmm.
they if they each side did something, both of them would get a ranking point. And in
Hmm.
this case, it was to feed a couple of algae into this thing called the processor, and
Hmm.
then a human player would pick up the algae and toss it into their barge.
Hmm.
And the fact that when two algae went through either side, then both sides got a ranking point.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah, and it's just one of the complexities of the game. It gives you just a little bit of extra, and
Yep.
but when you got down to the finals, those little bits of extra is exactly what won the game.
Wow.
So it's the
Okay.
attention to detail and planning.
Hmm.
And so the joy of this game is this we show the kids this game on the first weekend of January, and they are now competing with it the first weekend of March. And the
Wow.
World Championships are in May. So this isn't a huge development time. If
Right.
if you ask Boeing or any other big company, please design a robot to do this, they would tell you, well, it's going to be about 6 months before we have the spec worked out,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Exactly. Hmm.
This is, you basically have about 6 to 8 weeks to actually design, fabricate, build, debug, test, rebuild, and then go compete with it. So
And
it
then
happens very quickly.
and then when so have they already so in January, wait, when do they announce? So January 2026 they will announce the new game?
Yeah, the first full weekend of January.
Okay. And the championship is in Houston every year?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so next year I want to do this in person. When you come in town, and then we'll go over the new game, and that'll be just in time for me to get everybody local to come with me in person.
Sure.
So yeah, so if you can come a day early, or we can get away one evening, let's do the podcast again in person. We'll go over the 2026 game.
Yeah, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, maybe the first Monday in January.
Okay. Well, no, I was thinking like right before the championship.
Oh, right before
So,
the
so
championship.
like
Oh, yeah, we
when
could.
you're, because I live in Houston. So
Oh, okay. Sounds great.
so when you're in Houston for the championship, we'll get together, do the podcast in person, and
Okay.
that way I can get, rally the community up to come to the championship. Um,
Now, before
yeah.
that, the
Hmm.
entire month before that,
Hmm.
there are local versions of this competition happening all across the country.
I'm actually glad you brought that up. I'm trying to find out where to get in touch with First Houston. I know I can find it, but if you happen to know a person off the top
Fir-
of your head,
First Texas is the organization that you want to get a hold of.
okay.
And Texas does something called the district model.
Hmm.
And so there are competitions all across the state for the entire month of March. And they're
Okay.
usually in high schools or colleges, and you can go watch one of those. Now they don't have the big light show and stuff, and it's
Yeah,
usually about
yeah.
40 teams, but
Hmm.
it's really interesting to see uh, and go talk to the teams, especially the newer teams who
Hmm.
didn't make it to the World Championships, and you can sort of see the size of the struggle that they went through and the
Hmm.
sense of pride that they feel,
Hmm.
and you get to talk to a lot of really interesting kids. Some of them are still deer in the headlights. Some of them are really good,
Hmm.
and it's a much more interesting microcosm.
Hmm.
Plus, it's an opportunity if you wanted to, you could go and judge. And in fact, to your viewers, there are we're showing you the world championship of this thing.
Right.
There are hundreds and hundreds of these events happening all across the country. Almost every state has events in it, and you should look into volunteering. Go spend a
Yeah.
day, go visit. These are
Yep.
always free, open to the public. Bring the family, or if you'd really like to be inspired, go be a judge at one of these events. No experience needed, no robotics expertise needed. You can
Mm.
go and volunteer for the day and see some really amazing things. If you've ever wanted to be inspired on your own, uh, this is your chance.
Okay. Okay.
Uh,
Thank you. I will do that.
yeah,
Yeah, so I know
and
I'm going to get more involved. It's just a matter of what that path looks like, and I knew that this conversation today would get me to that next step.
yeah.
Um,
So the ways to get involved are base level. At least go watch.
yeah, yeah,
Second level, go volunteer at an event. And there are not only are there the big FRC events, Lego League needs judges and volunteers. You can become a referee. You could be a judge. Again, no experience required to be a judge. First Tech Challenge, same thing. Judges and other event volunteers. It's a great community to get involved with. If you're thinking about, if you're a person who thinks about, oh, I should really be out networking and doing things, these are the people you want to network with.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's
Right.
exactly it. And also looking for something that is family friendly. And,
Mhm.
a lot of people say, well, like you can go to church, you can, but they don't always share some of the same values.
Yep.
And we're looking somebody that shares our value. We're looking for a group, a community that shares our values. And I saw that firsthand when I was there. So obviously, it's going to be much more scaled back on the local level. But I think it was important to see how big it can get, and then to see like this is where it starts. So it was really good. I think the way that Dean kind of presented the big picture to me, and
Sure.
now I'm wanting to kind of reverse engineer.
And so, who are the mentors? So, the mentors are very interesting people.
Mhm.
We're not all robot experts.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was, but
Hmm.
the reality is that most of our mentors, uh, most of them actually were somebody's parent. Somebody's dad showed up at a meeting and said, "Oh, wow, that's really cool. Can I help with that tomorrow. I don't know anything about robots, right? But if you're willing to learn with the kids, and if you know the difference between the red wire and the black wire, that's about all the electronics knowledge you'll need to know, right? Everything is, relatively low voltage.
Yep.
If you have any construction experience, any management experience to help the kids get organized, there's tons of ways to get involved. Do you have to be there 40 hours a week? No. Maybe you just stop by once or twice. I get. I will tell you, it is addictive, and so stopping by once or twice is usually the gateway drug that we get
I
our
love
mentors
it.
from,
I love it.
and they tend to stay, right?
Yeah.
But you can get involved and get introduced to these folks. If you're a company, if you're somebody trying to develop local workforce, getting involved with these first kids is is a prime way to network with others in the area, but also get to know some potential employees because these are smart kids. Not all of them go to college. They all learn a wide range of skills from fabricating to just getting jobs done and completing things on a task. If you are a manager and you have employees, what a great benefit it would be to allow your employees to leave at 3 o'clock twice a week.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
going to lose. Okay, yeah. So it might cost you an hour of these people's time, but the reality is that they will appreciate it very much. The
Yeah.
students typically start asking the mentors, so what is it that you do for work, and where do you
Hmm.
work, and what do you
Hmm.
and this is a great way to get yourself into the schools, to get exposure with the kids,
Hmm.
to showcase your company,
Hmm.
invite the team over, show them what you do
Yep.
inside that nondescript beige tilt-up building that you own, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really cool stuff happens, and this
Yeah.
drives me nuts.
Yeah. Well,
Kids,
it's go ahead. Go ahead.
south, so in Kent, Washington, which is south of Seattle, it's
Mhm.
Boeing Central, right? There's Boeing plants
Oh,
all
I
over
know.
the place.
By the way, I used to work at Spirit Aerosystems in Wichita,
Oh,
Kansas, which used to be Boeing and may become Boeing again.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but very and I might even have worked on some of your dad's drawings. Side note, but one of my projects was going through old drawings
Uh-huh.
and digitizing them. And some of the dimensions, some of the guys or and gals didn't have that great of handwriting, so I'd have to do the calculations to see like what number that was. But anyway, I went through hundreds of hand drawings, and they were from like the 40s and 50s. That was a really cool project. But anyway, that was a tangent. But I
Understand?
immediately thought of that when you said your dad did hand drawings at Boeing. I'm like, I've probably seen some of them. Okay,
So
continues.
this is a whole valley full
Hmm.
of tilt-up warehouse style
Hmm.
businesses.
Hmm.
No windows, can't
Hmm.
see shit, or they
Hmm.
can't see anything, right?
Bleep. You can
And
cuss.
and the reality is, the kids have no idea what's in that building. So very cool, you put your logo on the outside, but if you're trying to attract workers, they have
Yeah.
no idea what you're
Nope.
doing there,
Nope.
right? And
Hmm.
so get, invite your local first team over and give them a tour of what it is ever it is
Hmm.
that you do,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
And the kids love to see this stuff. They have no
Yeah.
idea what's in that building.
Hmm.
And, especially in that Kent Valley, I've been
Hmm.
in some of these businesses. I've
Hmm.
taken kids to some of these businesses,
Hmm.
and what's being done in there is amazing. And the kids are
Hmm.
really enthused by, wow, I now know what this company makes. And
Hmm.
they have like laser cutters and milling machines and all of
Yeah.
this cool stuff, or they're building
Hmm.
robots, or they're building uh, water jet systems for some. Well, I know it's because of Boeing. The area down there has got like three of the four biggest water jet manufacturing companies are right there
Right.
because
Right.
and so Omax, the company who does water jets,
Uh-huh.
literally hired 16 first students as interns
Wow,
for
that's so
years.
cool.
I think they're still doing it, and a bunch of our kids actually still work there, right? And
Hmm.
that's where they were getting their workforce. Fresh Consulting over in Bellevue did the same thing. Red Dot did the same thing. So anyway, great source of of enthusiasm
Hmm.
and exposure for your company.
Yeah. I'm a
Plus,
million percent getting involved. A million percent. Houston, First Texas district model. I have it written down.
yeah.
Yep.
And then the other key thing is that if you have younger engineers who you
Mm-hmm.
would like to move into to help lead or manage
Mm-hmm.
others,
Mm-hmm.
this is an enormously useful playground for, especially for young engineers who may or may not be so good at keeping their schedules and stuff. When
Sure.
you're trying to manage the high school kids who are totally random sometimes,
Right.
uh, you start to learn why it's important for those status reports to show up so you know what's going on.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
and it's a nice little laboratory to sort of start developing your management skills because
Mm-hmm.
managing high school kids is uh, and managing engineers is not all that dissimilar. Having done
Mm-hmm.
both, and it
Yeah.
plus it's a very nice perk.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people I know are still at Boeing as engineers
Mm-hmm.
because Boeing supports first. They feel
Wow.
it as a fringe benefit.
Yeah.
They are incentivized.
Yeah.
Boeing mentors on teams can get special grants from Boeing to help pay for their team. They also get an
Interesting.
hourly stipend for being on the team.
Interesting. Wow.
Microsoft, $27.50 an hour for their people to come volunteer, right?
Wow.
And,
That's
and
really
so
cool.
yeah, and so a lot of major corporations are really behind this.
Yeah.
And hey, you may not be able to give the 27.50 an hour for volunteering, but certainly you could probably free somebody up. I mean, we're talking, encourage your people to get
For
involved
sure.
with these teams. It's refreshing for them. It's invigorating. You go to the contests, you feel like you're making a difference. I
Yep.
think one of the biggest sources of burnout among engineers is being heads down, working on something
Boom.
without
Yep. Boom. You said it.
no community involvement. That's what
Yep.
got me. That I
Yep.
didn't know community involvement whatsoever when I was at
Mm-hmm.
Microsoft. I was
Mm-hmm.
just heads down doing the hard stuff, and I finally came up from air for a minute, and I went, "Oh, there's got to be more to life than this, right?"
Yeah.
And there is more to life than this, and
Mm-hmm.
provide that opportunity for your employees. I think it's good for you. It's good for them.
Yeah, and something that I talked to Mark, and I know we're over. I could literally talk to you all day about this, but I think it was Mark. He does like some communications. I can't. I'm not. I'm spacing on his last name, but anyway, him and I were.
Giordano.
Yeah, yes, that's him.
Yep.
Okay,
Mhm.
so we were talking about. I think it was him. About aviation and aerospace. Well, first of all, when I had like the aha moment, because initially I was going because like this is cool, it's kids doing robotics, but I didn't, and I think a lot of people haven't made this connection. But when I was there, I was like, I would hire that person, that person, that person, that person, and I'm thinking in my mind, and as an association, that's what HYSKY is. We work with like aircraft, electric aircraft companies and air taxi companies and things like that. And I'm like, here's your talent pool. Because we're always talking about there's a shortage of engineers, there's a shortage of pilots. Here's your talent pool. They know all the fundamentals that are gonna make it so easy to just build your company. That's just a tiny piece of it. Because usually the company has to go through like all of that professional development, but all you have to do is just train them on the piece relevant to your company. And
Yep.
I had that connection. 'Cause, like these are the kinds of people that I would hire. So that's something that Mark and I think it was Mark. I hope it was. We're
Yeah.
talking about of like I could see bringing like our group, like our hydrogen aviation group, to a first event and letting them see like you see what I'm saying. And so I need to reach out to him. Actually, it's a reminder to myself to follow back up with him because I think that's how I could contribute is getting our community involved and like getting them to connect the dots of that, you know, robots, autonomy, electric, mechanical engineering, and you're sitting here saying the things Boeing is doing it. They know, like I said, and I
Mhm.
didn't even know Boeing was doing that.
Big time.
DoD's
They're
there,
they're the
yeah.
biggest sponsor. They're the biggest sponsor of teams in first next to NASA.
Wow, and NASA as well. So, yeah. I'm putting a note for me to follow up with. I think it was Mark. I have it written on my card on his card.
Yeah,
Um,
Mark Giordano. That he's the senior VP of development.
okay, yeah, that's definitely him then, because I do remember that title. Okay, thank you for that. All right, last question. I'm gonna hit you with it. What do you tell? Don't think about it. First thing that comes to your mind. What do you
Okay.
tell? What do you tell your 18-year-old self if he was sitting in front of you right now?
I tell him that uh, I tell him that opportunity lies in being very well prepared. You need to be able to answer yes to the question of, hey, can you help me do this? Right. And so I think luck is based on uh, random chance meeting opportunity, right?
Mm.
So all opportunity becomes because you randomly ran into somebody. I was in the right place at the right time, and I had the right skill set, and I knew the right people. And the joy of being in a program like First is that I am in the right place, and the right people are here. There's mentors, there are other people from the first world doing amazing things. The skill set's on me, but my ability to say yes when random opportunity happens is so very, very important. So you can actually make yourself lucky by being prepared to the point where when random opportunity presents itself, you have the ability to say, yes, I can do that for you. If you
Oh, I
don't
love
have
that.
the skill set, you're uh, you're 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 going to miss all sorts of opportunities. The
Yeah,
other thing, you go if you go to the grocery store, if I stood up in the middle of the grocery store with like say 100 people in there, somebody in there would actually really like to hire me, but there's no way for me to know that, right? We
right.
probably passed each other in the aisle. I'm going, oh, I really like to get a job. And this guy's coming to, God, I wish I could find somebody who had a software engineering degree to do something for me, right? And if I don't communicate with that person, that opportunity is completely missed.
Hmm.
And so I think that is what I would tell myself is prepare yourself to be lucky.
Mm, and I think there's a famous, I want to say it might be Napoleon Hill or so. I've liked, I used to read some of his books. I love the book Think and Grow Rich. And I don't remember if it's in this book or if it was a quote, but it was very similar. It was like, luck is when opportunity meets preparedness. And in my brother's words, shout out Matt McLean, he would say, it's easy to get people's attention, but what are you going to do when you got it? And so that's the preparedness, the ability. So you can get people's attention, but you got to be able to do both. There's some people that have the skills and don't know how to get the attention, and that was beautifully said. That really resonated. Kevin, any last thoughts or words you would like to, or challenges or calls to action you would like to give the hydrogen aviation audience?
Well, yeah, I mean, um, I think every company's success it is really keyed to finding the right people to do the right thing at the right time. I think that uh, in general, the U.S. has a labor shortage. We have lots of very smart people, but they're not in the right place. And so the joy of getting involved in a community that is local to you is making sure that your opportunity to find people in your place is amplified, right? You do you really want every one of your high school graduates to run off to Silicon Valley or Seattle or Austin, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that part of the struggles that the U.S. has right now um, um, is that not enough people get involved with the education of young people, and they aren't giving them the skills or working with the skills that are needed in their area. And that's really a shame because I think that there's a lot of good opportunities that are missed because of that. And the other one is that uh, as much as you would like to believe that your company is the coolest thing ever, the reality is I've never heard of your company. Sorry,
Exactly.
I'm really into
Yeah.
the tech world.
Yep.
Right. And so what are you going to do to fix that? And I think the step one is to get involved in a larger community. We have
Yep.
that. We have several million people that have been through FIRST. We have 850,000 students doing it right now. And you want your students, you want those students to know who your company is. And the best way
Boom.
to do that is to get involved in some way. Um, uh, it isn't always just sponsorship, and actually money isn't, I mean, money's important. It's the resource that makes this whole thing work, but just as important are people. And so get involved, uh, get some mentorship going from you or your company, and make sure that these students hear about what your company does, the cool things that you have to offer, and most importantly, tell them what you need, right? Kids don't really know what engineers do. They don't
I don't know
just,
that engineers know what
yeah, yeah.
engineers do.
But what's if
I get
you
what you're
know
saying.
when you're trying to find somebody with the right skill set, wouldn't it have been a lot better to a couple of years ago had said, here's the skill set I want you to learn,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so that means talking to these young people before they hit college,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
getting directing them, or encouraging them to pursue the skill sets that you need rather than what Microsoft, because barring anything else, they're going to go for the skill set that sounds like the companies that they know
Yeah.
need.
Million percent. And it reminds me of another quote. Another organization we work with is Women in Drones,
Mhm.
and the CEO Sharon Rossmark. Shout out Sharon Rossmark. She has a slogan: if you see me, you can be me.
Mhm.
And it's obviously about representation and everything, but also from a company's standpoint, they're only seeing Boeing, Microsoft, NASA, these sorts of things. So if you go in there, and 9 times out of 10, the startups or the smaller companies are probably doing, no offense to NASA and Boeing, I'm not saying you're not doing cool stuff, but you're big and you have a lot of bureaucracy.
Yeah.
9 times out of 10, they're probably going to have a lot more fun at a smaller company and
Oh,
actually
absolutely.
work on the cool stuff than the larger companies, you know. So, but they don't know that. They don't know that until that somebody shows them that. So yeah, I think you're spot on. If anybody's in the Houston area and wants to get involved with me, definitely reach out, because as soon as we get off of this, I'm reaching out to First Texas. So, Kevin, it was absolutely 100% all my pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your time. Thank you so much for all of your volunteer work to the universe, to First, but to the universe, and for being a mentor to kids and inspiring young kids. It is very touching. I cannot wait to have you back on the HYSKY Pod, which we're going to do 2026 championship in person.
Sounds good.
Okay, thanks so much again. And thanks for all you do. Have a wonderful week. And I'll send you the final version of this podcast. Thanks so much.
Thanks,
Go.
Tim.